So, Mr. Donnelly, what are we going to do today?
We are going to have a look at the relationship between pressure and volume and see what sort of graph we can draw of these two.
Sounds great.
The first thing we're going to do is have a look at the graph we get when we look at these values here. So we've got some values for volume of a gas, and we've got the pressure that the gas is under, and we're going to draw a quick graph to have a look at what they look like.
Interesting.
Nice looking results. But do they actually tell us anything?
Difficult to tell, really. It kind of looks a little bit like an inversely proportional relationship, but I'm not really sure.
And unfortunately in physics, that's just not enough. The only way we can be sure is to try and manipulate this data to see if we get a nice straight line. So let's see if we can do a little research to find out a little more. Between
Is it pressure and volume?
pressure and volume.
And what is that link, Mr. Donnelly?
Boyle's law tells us that if we multiply the pressure of a gas by the volume of a gas, it will always be constant if the temperature stays the same. So I can rewrite that like this.
Cool.
Now, if that's the case, I can rearrange the formula so it looks like this. And that tells me that pressure is proportional to the inverse of volume. So, before we drew a graph of pressure against volume, and it looks something like that.
Yeah, that's just like what we got.
If we try and draw a graph of pressure against the inverse of volume, if this relationship here is true, then what we will get is a nice straight line.
And then we'll know if it's really proportional.
Yay!
Awesome. So, Mr. Donnelly, now we know we need to plot the inverse of volume against pressure. How do we do that?
Okay, the first thing we need to do is to set up a new data table so that we've got our results ready to plot. So I'm going to copy across my pressure data, but I'm not going to copy across the volume data because we're going to need to perform a calculation on that.
Yep, we need to do the inverse, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to type in here equals, and then I'm going to have 1 divided by the value here.
Okay.
And Excel is going to calculate that for us.
Excellent. And then we can use that clever little green box, right?
Yep, I think we can drag this down and it will copy all of our calculations for all of our results.
Excellent. But the decimal places are a little bit different.
So we can move up here and use this useful little decimal place rearranger.
Awesome.
And now we have them all to the same decimal place.
Excellent.
So now all we need to do is to see whether or not when we draw our graph we have the relationship we expect. So
it should be proportional. Yep.
Hopefully.
Okay.
So now I'm going to insert, and I want an XY scatter graph, and I just want to see the points for now.
Yep. Hey, looks pretty good.
So just to check that everything is fine, I'm going to add a line of best fit. So I'm going to go to add chart element.
Yep.
Add a trend line, and I'm going to add a linear trend line. Now,
but it's not yet shown as if that goes through the origin.
No. I'm going to make the graph a little bit bigger. And what we're going to do now is we're going to format that trend line.
Okay.
So I need to go to more trend line options. And if you have a look, Dr. Musket, over here there is moving the line backwards and forwards. Now I want to move it backward.
And how would we know how far to move it backwards?
Well, if you look, if I set it now to moving it backwards 100,
yep,
I'm going to get completely the wrong graph.
Yeah.
But I want to move it backwards so it crosses the y-axis. So I'm going to move it back whatever this value is here.
Okay, so that's the lowest value that we have plotted on the x-axis.
So, actually, I guess I'm actually going to really want to do that one then. So I need to go to my graph. I need to go to trend line, formatting options, And all I want to type in here is 0.17.
Excellent.
And now, there we go.
Fantastic.
And it's definitely going through the origin of the graph.
Is there any other way we could really know that it's really at 0, 0?
The other thing we could do is we could have a look to see whether or not the equation also tells us the same piece of information. So more trendline options, and this time I want to display the equation on the chart.
Okay.
And you can see there that I've got an incredibly small value for the y-intercept. It's effectively 0. So I'm comfortable that that tells us that it's directly proportional.
Excellent.